This week, we're bringing you our series based on the rise and fall of world-renowned fasting expert Linda Burfield Hazard. This is one of those stories that keeps on giving. We're going back to the old times to talk about an old-timey doctor practicing some old-timey medicine back in the days when med school took 2 to 6 weeks. And you could fool anyone into anything if you could spell and had fancy handwriting. This story starts in the early 1900s when Linda Hazard took on 2 new patients, a pair of wealthy English sisters with money to burn and a passion for new age health fads. It's a slow motion car crash, folks. So hold on to your butts. Also, for this episode, I read the excellent book, Starvation Heights by Greg Olson. I couldn't recommend this book more if you're into this kind of stuff. Also, this story takes place in the wilderness southwest of Seattle across the Puget Sound. So, Marcia, Jilly, Molly, Lysana, and all of our gooey duck digging family. This one's for you, baby.
This one's for you, baby. And what is this is going to be like a multi-part situation?
Yes, it is. For lots of reasons. Mostly because this book is over 400 pages.
And she read every single one of them. Why
Every
you
single
ask?
one of them?
No one knows.
No. It's great. It was great. It was a really, really, really good read. I had to cut some super fun stuff out or else this would be like 5 parts or more.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. I'm not doing like a reading of the entire freaking book. But,
Okay.
yeah, it's real fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So be on the lookout for...
Part 2, part 3,
Yeah.
probably not a part 4.
Okay. Well, when we get them done, we'll get them up early for our subscribers on Patreon and Spotify. So keep your little freaking eyes glued to the scene or whatever that's called. Yeah. We do want to thank all our Patreon supporters, both new and old. Big love goes out to Emily and Justin W. We want to thank William H. for being cool AF and buying us a round of drinks via PayPal.
Yeah.
If you want to keep us tipsy and charming like William, there's a link in the show notes for that kind of heroic action. Thank you to Callie J. for buying a single exclusive episode over at murielsmurders.com. You can also buy single exclusive episodes at patreon.com/murielsmurders. You don't have to subscribe to unlock everything, which you obviously should do. Yeah. But if you just want like one episode or something like that, you can buy them for $3 a pop. You know, thank you to those who sign up for our Spotify exclusive feed. And please, if you haven't done it yet, find us on YouTube, find us on TikTok, subscribe, and force your loved ones to listen to Muriel's Murders. Boom, roasted.
All right. This is a story about murder, drugs, adult themes, etc. So if you're like Nick and you don't want to hear about those things, go listen to a different podcast.
And these are podcasters who do joke around about this subject matter and tend to curse every now and again. So if you don't like it, turn it off.
All right, Nikki, are you ready to hear this story?
No.
Okay. Let's get started. All right. We're starting in the year 1910, and we're in the lobby of an elegant hotel in Victoria, British Columbia, just across the border from the U.S. in Canada.
Yeah.
It's September, so fall is creeping in. It's dark and rainy, but it's cozy and lively in the lobby. And in the center of it all are 2 extremely fancy sisters in heavy floor-length gowns, gloved and topped off with fabulous hats, drinking their afternoon tea. In 1910, Miss Claire and Miss Dorothea Williamson were unmarried and in their 30s, English, and, at a glance, undeniably upper class. Perfect posture, delicate, white, cloistered skin, jewel-toned eyes, thick, healthy, robust hair. Claire and Dora were the last of their clan. They lost their siblings to scarlet fever, like childhood illness, and both their parents died by the time they were teenagers. The girls were basically raised by their Australian nursemaid turned lifelong ladies' maid, Margaret Conway, who in 1910 was away visiting her family in Australia. Now, the death of their family left the girls with piles and piles of money and nothing to do but travel around the world first class with 14 trunks full of gowns and jewels.
Okay, I'm not trying to say like they're lucky,
I know.
you know, because everyone died and that's sad.
Yeah.
But that's sick though. That part is tight. Hella jewels, crowns, dresses.
Yeah.
Going and just traveling around. Your
Hanging out
sister.
with your
You
sister.
said their hair was good.
Yeah, good hair.
You know.
Claire and Dora were educated in French, Swiss, and English boarding schools, so they were used to the rhythm of travel.
A Swiss boarding school.
I know.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I know.
Or would that
We're
be
so. I
terrible?
think we're just so thirsty. I feel like I'm always like, oh man, I want to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
So they were also sort of ahead of their time in that they managed all their own business affairs themselves. So no husband or male relative controlled their money. And remember, by now, you know, women in the U.S. couldn't even vote, right?
Right.
They had about $1 million American in their estate, right? That's about like just in cash, right? And that's about 33 million in today's money, as well as like solid land holdings in Canada, the US, England, and Australia. They had multiple homes, all that kind of stuff.
That would just be so good. That would be. People say you're not supposed to want that or it doesn't make you happy. I'm not saying it would make me happy. I'm not saying it would solve all my problems. I'm not saying it's like, but it would just be cool to do like the next part that way.
I mean, I do think that parts of this story ring true for me for you also, which may be weird.
Yeah,
once
that
it
is weird.
unfolds.
Now I've what part?
Like somebody with great
We'll see.
hair who wants like to travel with a bunch of clothes and jewels. You know who you are, Nick. All right. So they relied on each other as partners in life, right? They didn't have, they hung out all the time. They were known to be really private, especially when it came to business. The only thing was they were also just really gullible. International private boarding schools don't teach street smart. So the ladies still had this innocent, trusting, childlike thing going on. Claire, the youngest, was the most impulsive, enthusiastic of the two. And Dora, who was older by 4 years, was kind of like an indulgent mom figure or something. Like she organized their plans, booked the hotels. If Claire wanted to do something, Dora made it happen, and she never said no.
Okay. Yeah, cool older sister.
Yeah, you know, or just like caretaker, sort of like fretting older sister.
Oh, see, that's how you see it.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, no, now who's being exposed?
I know. I exposed myself. I'm a flasher. All right. The women were in the middle of a months-long adventure. They'd been on the road for like 6 months or something like that. They'd sailed from England to Canada and then traveled east to west across the entire country, visiting all their distant relatives. But despite the life of leisure, the girls were forever, Nick Casalini, drifting in a cloud of ennui. They felt they were never quite as happy as they should be,
Right.
given the circumstances. They also had a flair for hypochondria, almost relishing, and this doesn't remind you of you, but reminds me of me, kind of. Or at least parts of me.
I mean, definitely more you than me. I mean,
Maybe
it's not
these are
me
just
at all, and
people.
it's kind of
I'm
like
not a hypochondriac. Don't say that about
a little
me.
bit. I mean, it's, you know, compared to me. Or you just have all these issues and problems that are real. So which one is it?
I don't know, man.
Are you a dying?
I don't have all these issues. Stop. Everyone stop. No one is like either one of us. We're stopping saying that throughout this.
Okay.
Nick.
Okay.
So they never felt as happy as they should be given the circumstances. And they also had a flair for hypochondria, almost relishing in aches and pains and vague lingering sicknesses no doctor could really diagnose or cure.
Sure.
And so their main obsession / hobby became health and well-being. They were vegetarians and they were super into like natural remedies and cures, homeopathic stuff. They particularly loved staying in sanitariums for the rich and existentially frustrated. On their journey so far, they'd stopped at several spas and retreats for rejuvenation, fad dieting, and the latest in wellness trends.
Damn, that was happening in 1910.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
That's crazy.
And so, of course, always on the hunt for a new sanitarium. In Victoria, the girls, stumbled across an ad in a newspaper for a new book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease by a Seattle-based doctor named Linda Burfield Hazard. Now, the title alone got Claire's scalp tingling, right? She had to have this book. Right away, she wrote to Dr. Hazard requesting a copy. Claire was always the more theatrical of the two.
That's just like the original Amazon.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, will you send me one of those, please?
Yeah,
Author.
You have to write. So Claire was always the more theatrical of the two. So she also included an extensive, slightly exaggerated list of their physical ailments. Now, Claire was sure she had something catastrophic wrong with the inside of her body. She thought for a long time that she had a sensitive stomach until pretty recently, an osteopathic doctor in London told Claire that her uterus had fallen back against her spine and her ovaries were swollen, puffed up like marshmallows. Now, as for Dora, Claire wrote her sister suffered from swollen glands and arthritic knees, and that, quote, Dora's eyes just now are very bloodshot and seem to be eliminating a good deal of matter. Her period was due 10 days ago, and she has a very sharp pain over the right temple whenever she moves. But just for the record, to the people who knew them, Claire and Dora seemed healthy as little bears, right? They spent their time chilling in spas, drinking water, being vegetarian. They looked great. Their cousins thought Dora and Claire's only problem was just that they were too rich.
Yeah, and bored.
Yeah. But anyway, the letter went out and the doctor responded, sending along a copy of her book. Linda Hazard was apparently the only licensed fasting specialist in the world. And Dr. Hazard's belief was that all illnesses came from poor digestion. If you rest your digestive system through fasting, you'll release all the toxins built up in your body. And she claimed that through guiding her patients through extensive fasts, she'd cured anything that you could possibly think of. She cured tuberculosis, epilepsy, heart problems, dental problems, cancer, and of course, insanity.
I like how she's just like, I cured them. It's like you just starved them. Like that's not
according to Linda.
She's like, I cured them by them not eating.
Yeah. And guiding them through the process, pushing them past the bounds of reasonability to get to the cure.
So kidnapping them, capturing them, and not giving them food.
Now, at the time, the girls were already self-administering several treatments recommended by different doctors on their travels. Dora had been on a fruit fast and was giving herself nightly enemas, and Claire was stuffing boric acid and glycerin-soaked rags up her coochie for 24 hours at a time.
Wait, what? What was it soaked with?
Boric acid and glycerin. It's kind of like a mild antiseptic, but it's also just like something you use to clean stuff. It's like a detergent. I don't know, man. I can't believe they told her to do that.
What was she doing that for?
Just one of the treatments for
one of the random things.
They said with your inflamed uterus. Listen, a doctor told her it would strengthen the ligaments supporting her uterus and keep it from flopping around all over the place. So that's what she was doing. Old-timey doctors, man. You know it. Favorite kind of doctor. All right, Dr. Hazard told Dora and Claire flat out fasting was the only cure for their health problems, and she would start treating them right away, instructing them to eat only vegetable broth and unleavened bread, and for God's sake, stop putting the acid rags up their coochie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the girls were ecstatic. They read the book aloud to each other, enthralled by this simple yet radically effective treatment of starving yourself. The book came with a brochure for Dr. Hazard's sanitarium, Hazard's Institute of Natural Therapeutics that was based in Olalla, Washington. So that was a teeny coastal village across the Puget Sound from Seattle.
What's it called?
Olalla. Across the Puget Sound from Seattle in the rugged, untamed tangle of peninsulas and islands west of Seattle. A perfect place to convalesce in the countryside. So the girls, they decided they just had to do it. They had to go. Dr. Hazard's sanitarium was literally perfect in every way.
Her name is literally Dr. Hazard. Come on. Dr. Hazard. Sounds like she's hosting like a midnight creep fest, of like B movies, horror B movies.
I know.
Dr.
I mean,
Hazard.
every element just gets more and more
Sanitarium.
unfortunate.
In rainy ass, blackberry ass Pacific Northwest.
All right. So their plan, they would spend the winter in California. They would visit their uncle, John Herbert, and then stay at the exclusive Arrowwood Hotel where they would receive massages, mud baths, and water therapy, which was basically just drinking a gallon of water a day. And then in the spring, they would meet Dr. Hazard in Seattle. They figured by February, the weather in Seattle would be just lovely. Yet another mistake made by these sweet summer children, unless you love the stabbing sensation of wind-driven freezing rain. February is not an awesome time to go to Seattle.
Yeah. That's when I was, that's always, I had my birthday. My birthday's in February, so I had a childhood of gray birthdays.
Yeah, gray, just wet.
Just
not quite snow.
Just moss and things growing out of literally every crack.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
So their plan was to stay for the fasting treatment over the spring of 1911. It takes like a month or two, and then continue on with their travels. Claire would go to England to take some classes, and Dora would join their lifelong ladies' maid, Margaret Conway, in Australia. In California, they were, as always, private about the specifics of their lives. Mm-hmm. They decided not to tell their Uncle John or anyone else about the weird shit they were about to get up to in Seattle. Honestly, they thought no one would understand how cutting edge the treatment was, and they were worried their relatives would make fun of them. So instead, Dora and Claire told everyone they were going to Canada on business. So, in case you're wondering, step one of getting murdered by Linda Hazard is not telling anyone you're going to her remote wilderness sanatorium. Just to throw it out there.
I can really, truly appreciate how this 1910 story sounds like it could be a 2024 story.
I know. It's also 2025. Right?
Oh my God. What year is it? Oh, you're right. It's definitely not 2024.
And also like an LA story.
Yeah.
It feels like so like if you're in LA, oh goodness, Seattle in February for this treatment.
Yeah. It's basically jail, and you don't eat and you come out feeling great.
Oh my God. And there's so many enemas. We'll get to that.
And don't tell anyone you're going.
Mm-hmm. So Dora and Claire finally met Linda Hazard in person in Seattle in February 1911. And she was as formidable as she sounded in her letters. A confident, handsome 43-year-old with a big, loud voice. Dr. Hazard shocked the women by grabbing their gloved hands and shaking them firmly like a man. In the corner lurked Dr. Hazard's husband, Samuel. Tall, dark, and handsome with a big black mustache. he worked for the powerful fasting doctor, right? He was a business manager of sorts who worked behind the scenes and always smelled just a little bit like booze. Dr. Hazard launched into her introductory speech with the conviction and style of a preacher delivering a sermon. She acknowledged the sisters' English accents, like, okay, right. And, she said, well, I also have English roots as well, right? My mom was Canadian.
And it's like, well, I have English friends too. So, my best friend is English, as a matter of fact.
And she was, quote, raised in a home of refinement under sheltered and orthodox methods, whatever that meant. Dr. Hazard went over her principles regarding fasting and eating in general. She was strictly vegetarian and called meat eaters disgusting and suicidal. And she bragged about how her treatments truly saved people, how she slowly restricted the food of her patients until they stopped having any solid food, and how the daily the daily enemas she gave them brought out, quote, the foulest discharges from the bowels, and each enema brought away quantities of old fecal matter with quantities of bile, blackish in color.
That sounds pretty good. I kind of want to sign up for that part.
I knew it.
You knew I liked that part. I have an idea about why she said the Orthodox thing.
Why?
I think that's code for, so you better expect me to be harsh
and strict
yeah. and if you speak out of line, I'm going to slap you.
Yeah. I think that might be true. Oh, wow. Nick, so sassy.
That's what I think.
All right. So she said after 45 days or so of fasting, her patients were smarter and more energetic. She said it happened again and again. Starvation, oodles of enemas, black, foul-smelling discharge, and then bam, cured. And at this point, Dr. Hazard had many diehard followers, people who swore by her treatments.
In reality, or she's saying she does?
In reality. As usual, Claire was totally sold, hook, line, and sinker, while Dora was a little more skeptical. But Dora would never say no to Claire, and she was excited to go spend some time in the country. Unfortunately, though, the doctor said the sanitarium was under renovations and it wasn't quite ready to receive them. So while the girls were chomping at the bit to get to Olalla, they agreed to start their treatment in Seattle. They'd live at the Buena Vista Apartments and have daily treatments at Linda Hazard's office. And Dr. Hazard said they had no time to lose. Their bodies were filled with poison. So at that very visit, after her lecture, Linda Hazard gave the girls a violent, slapping, thumping massage and an enema just to get those poisons moving along.
Wait, okay. What's an enema again? Specifically? It's like, not a colon cleanse. What is it?
What is it? It's like you put a tube up your butt and then you feed like warm water through it. And then it like kind of fills up your digested tract, like your whole like
your butt tube, your poop.
Why
tube.
are you asking me?
I actually am curious. I wasn't sure if it was butt or pee.
It's definitely butt.
What's the thing that the pee comes out of? Urethra?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Urethra Franklin.
I was gonna say butt or vagina, but
were you gonna say butt or vagina?
Yeah.
So you're like a yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah. Okay, so
are you kidding me?
Enemas. Enemas are for butt. It's butt stuff. I don't know why it's so funny.
Okay.
Is it? Yes.
Why are you asking me again to explain it again? It goes in your butt.
Okay, it's a butt one. Okay.
I think you just want me to say it again. All right. Linda Hazard's story started on a farm in rural Minnesota in 1868. She was a wild, outdoorsy kid, the oldest of 7. Her mom was Canadian. Her dad was a Civil War vet. And the couple had kind of an unorthodox way of raising the family, at least for the time. They were almost exclusively vegetarian, and Linda's father believed in preventative medicine. So they, like everybody else, they didn't just call the doctor when the kids were sick, right? They actually had a doctor do regular checkups, right? That was novel for the time. And, that was all pretty cool. But the bummer was old-timey medicine was basically a crapshoot, right? So their family doctor convinced everyone the kids all had these intestinal parasites. And then he dosed them with this really powerful drug that made them all barf and have diarrhea and get super sick. And Linda said that she believes that permanently damaged her stomach, and she was sickly and underweight for years. Linda's first husband was 14 years her senior. She was married off at just 18. And they had a couple kids, and Linda continued to struggle with her health. She was always thin and tired. She lost some teeth. And it wasn't until she discovered fasting that her health completely turned around. Eventually, her first husband abandoned the family. And then after that, Linda dropped her kids off at her mom's house and struck out to become a fasting specialist. By the time Linda was in her early 30s, she was all trained up on fasting and starving folks all across Minneapolis with many successful cases. However, in 1902, Linda fasted a woman who was looking for help recovering from a recent stroke. And 39 days into the 40-day fast, the woman died. Linda did the post-mortem exam herself and listed the cause of death as paralysis. Now, a subsequent exam listed her death as starvation. Also, all the woman's jewelry was missing.
Okay.
All right.
Hold on. Did I miss the part where she becomes a doctor?
It's like different there's these different classifications. So like if you're into these naturopath sort of things, like fasting, I think chiropractic was one. Like there were different like alternative medicines that you could practice, and then depending on the state, you could get licensed just by like learning how to do it.
It's amazing how far we've come at all. This is like 1900s.
Yeah.
It's like 124 years ago, 125 years ago. That was a callback joke. It's like crazy just how far we've come.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure in Minnesota that she could call herself a doctor, but she did end up getting licensed in Washington because a few of the rules changed about that.
Okay.
And she studied under different people. She like went to a clinic and studied, it's definitely not as rigorous as.
Was this before or after her husband left?
After.
Okay.
Yeah. So she left her kids with her mom and struck out to become a fasting specialist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so jewelry's missing. This lady.
Yeah. So, okay, fine. Her jewelry's missing. And it was really scandalous, right? Like there was like the coroner got in the paper. He was like, this person should be practicing medicine. Like there was some battling in the headlines of the newspapers. But back then, it's Wild West times. Everything was new. I mean, people were still putting opioids in cold medicine. Linda,
the good old days.
Linda actually technically hadn't done anything illegal because there just wasn't a law against helping someone intentionally starve themselves. Like it might have felt wrong. People thought it was wrong, but it wasn't illegal. So no criminal charges were filed. And Linda continued with her medical practice. So Linda met Sam Hazard around this time. He was drop dead gorgeous, tall, a graduate of the West Point Military Academy, where he was a top-ranking student. He was fluent in 4 languages, and he was also just crashing and burning. Sam just couldn't keep it together. With all his promise, he just couldn't. He really liked spending money he didn't have, and he really liked having as much sex with different people as possible. He ended up deserting his military post, getting slapped with bigamy charges for having 2 wives, and spending some time in prison after a spectacularly scandalous trial. Now, it's kind of complicated. This is how I think it went. I think he was married to his first wife, left her, never got divorced, got a second wife while simultaneously hooking up with Linda. And then eventually after prison, Linda became his third wife and they moved to Seattle together. So long story short, he was a little hot potato who thought his third wife, Linda, was going to do great things. So he tied his wagon to hers and the couple went to Seattle to make Linda's dream of a state-of-the-art starvation sanitarium a reality.
I let you. The best part about it, it's like the lowest overhead.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like all you need is rooms and I don't know,
water, tubing,
some tubes for the buttholes, and then but you don't. You just like you have your grocery bill is zero.
Yeah. Back in Seattle, Dora and Claire settled into their little apartment at the Buena Vista and started their fasting treatment. Just as like a quick aside, there was a Buena Vista Apartments in Seattle on Capitol Hill right next to our first apartment.
When you first said that, I was like, "Oh,
it
yeah,
can't be that one,
I
right?"
mean, there's probably been
Buena
dozens,
Vistas.
and
And I think
many.
that street is actually called Buena Vista, so that would make sense if they did it a little closer to downtown. Because I don't know what Capitol Hill was back then, but nobody is going to be wanting to walk up those hills. That's a nightmare.
we did it all the time.
You know, but like not like in a wagon or something. You know what I mean? Like old timey, you're going to work all day and then go walk up and there's no pavement. It's like you're going to be walking up all the mud.
I think that's just literally how people lived. I think that
nightmare.
That is what the world was.
Oh, you don't know what the world was.
Yes,
You don't even know what an enema is.
There was hills and people had to walk up
I'm
them.
just saying, I don't know if Seattle went that far back in the day.
Right. And we don't know if they were living they were our old neighbors or not, you know?
They might have been. I like to think of it that way. All right. So their new diet, all tomato water, which was canned tomatoes, boiled until the tomatoes disintegrated, and then seasoned with a 1/4 teaspoon of butter, no salt, no sugar. They get 1 cup tomato water twice a day. And they were also required to go speed walking several times a day. And then 5 days a week, they went into Linda Hazard's office where they received a violent osteopathic massage followed by
enemas.
In the beginning, the girls just sat around their dingy 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle, biding their time for when the luxurious Olala Sanitarium would open. And they mostly talked about being hungry and sort of going like, is it working? Yeah, I think it's working. No. The fasting is totally working. Just a little bit of that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But then they started fainting, just thumping down randomly around the house, which was this new development for them, right? So eventually they got too weak to do in-office visits, and their treatment was carried out at the apartment by hired nurses and staff and like outpatient calls by Dr. Hazard.
How much do they pay for this?
A lot. We'll get to the numbers total later, but like in today's money, legitimately like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's crazy. So maybe not quite that much, but a lot. All right. So, also the other thing that was going on, just as a side note, this wasn't the idyllic countryside spring that they'd seen before in their lives, right? This was a Seattle spring. So not only were they stuck inside, outside the window was just unrelenting, gray, and wet. As the treatment progressed, so did the length of the enemas. So they took so long that the women would faint mid-enema. Nurses had to rig up a canvas sling to hold them steady in the bathtub. And it just felt like an endless, dreary, gray enema parade punctuated by punishing osteopathic massage. And by now, like nightmare.
Punishing. They're just getting their ass beat.
Yeah, like slapping, punching. I guess I tried to look it up. Chat GPT's, that's as lazy as I am.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a soft tissue version of like chiropractic work. So it's like deep tissue massaging and adjustments based on like that. So she's just punching, slapping them, leaving marks. All right. So continuing on, let me find my place. So by now, Dora and Claire became convinced that they were even more sick than they initially thought. A thought bolstered by Dr. Hazard. She was like, absolutely, you were just way too sick before, right? And this, this cure is just bringing those poisons up to the surface. Claire was so weak, she slept all day, and the neighbors could hear the girls groaning through the walls and watch them walk, assisted by nurses, up and down the halls in a sad attempt at exercise. And as the weeks progressed, their eyes began to look hollow, their skin got tighter, the bones stuck out of their hands. And because Claire and Dora had always handled their affairs themselves, no one was monitoring them or checking in about finances or property management. No one even knew where they were. By the time the women had fasted for about a month, Claire had lost the most weight and was physically much weaker than Dora. But Dora was having mental problems. She was losing it. She was rambling incoherently. Dr. Hazard declared that the core of Dora's problem was actually in her brain, and not to worry, they were getting close to finding the root cause of the sisters' bad health. To help the sisters, Dr. Hazard brought in a lawyer to take down their correspondence and help manage their financial accounts. They were either too weak or too confused to write letters themselves. Dr. Hazard, Samuel Hazard, and the lawyer gathered financial information from Claire. They helped her deposit cashier's checks and move money around, pay her bills. And Dr. Hazard even graciously allowed the women to keep their jewels, land deeds, and other valuables in her personal safe. By late April, there was some heat on that little apartment in Buena Vista. Neighbors were noticing something was really wrong. There were whispers and rumors, concerned citizens. And on the evening of April 21st, almost 2 months since the treatment began, Dr. Hazard came to the apartment to pack up all the girls' belongings. In the morning, they would finally be transferred to the sanitarium in Olalla. An ambulance picked them up at 11 a.m. the next day, and the women were brought out on stretchers. They couldn't walk anymore, their heads wrapped in gauze, in front of an audience of concerned neighbors who weren't sure if this was a chicken or the egg situation. Were they sick, or were they just starving to death?
Yeah.
During the ambulance transfer to Olalla, Dr. Hazard's lawyer met them with a case of papers and a pen. At the boat launch, he helped Claire write a codicil to her will, leaving an annual payment to the Hazard Institute of Natural Therapeutics upon her death. And then they got on a ferry bound for Olalla.
So what? There's just no law against starving people to death if they
enthusiastically pay for it and want it and say it's really good. They're just like, yes, like, let's keep going. Olalla was right on the coast, right? It was a beach town. The shores were rocky, just a deep crust at the time of shellfish beds. So it's a lot like out of your grandma's house, just this abundance of food on the shore.
Yeah.
Hard to land a boat because there's so many oysters. The woods were dark, dense pine forests. In the spring of 1911, all Olalla had in terms of infrastructure was a wooden boardwalk to keep residents from sinking into the thick mud in the center of town. The village didn't have electricity. After a 2-hour boat ride, the sisters were loaded into a horse-drawn cart filled with blankets and hay and pulled up a steep, winding hill to the unfinished sanitarium. Dr. Hazard's informal name for her sanitarium was Wilderness Heights. Her dream was to create the best sanitarium in the world, an elegant, classy affair with the capacity for 100 patients at a time, 3 stories tall, gleaming white paint job, 20 lovely single cabins out on the ground surrounded by manicured native huckleberry bushes.
And what now? It's just a garage.
Well, in 1911, the dream had yet to come to fruition. They had 40 partially cleared acres modeled with huge pine stumps they just couldn't get out, a handful of rough shack-like cabins, and the main house where Linda and Samuel Hazard lived in a few small rooms. Claire and Dora were hauled into the Hazard's house on stretchers, carried through the narrow hallways and up the attic stairs where there were 2 makeshift bedrooms separated by a privacy curtain. A small attic window gave a view of the pines, and this was the luxurious country sanitarium they had been waiting for. Claire and Dora were kept separately. Dr. Hazard said she didn't want them to get distracted from their healing journey. She told both women they were too weak to have any visitors, even their own sister. As Dora became more lucid, she tried to visit and connect with Claire, but Claire by then had become completely militant about following Dr. Hazard's rules. Even when they weren't being watched, Claire refused to visit with her sister at all. She was going to see this thing to the end.
I thought they said 40 days.
Yeah.
But you said it's already been 2 months or something.
Yeah.
So it's way over 40 days.
Yeah, they didn't start. I think that the fast is gradual. So like they start it and then they'll like feed one. Like I think at some point, it's not an exact like 1-to-1. They'll start fasting, but they're eating solid food.
It's such a sadistic thing to do, to sit back and shepherd someone through this kind of death.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have got to tell you, the reason why this is 3 parts is because this story is like the main story that's, associated with Linda Hazard. But she went on and on and on to keep doing this, like unimpeded, until the end of her life. It's really crazy the way that this story kind of unfolds for her. All right. So
what about her staff? Just like believes it or doesn't believe that they're dying?
A lot of them are diehard fanatics.
She just had that cult.
She had that cult-like energy. Some people really believed her. A lot of people were just into I'm not saying like this is the thing, but like really into like reading fortunes and tarot cards and homeopathic stuff. Like there's a whole world of like worldview around it, That's just seems like such a current day thing, not something that was back then. It's so funny because I feel like like they call it like New Age or whatever. Yeah, it's not that new. Yeah, totally. I
didn't even realize that.
At noon on May 22nd, 1911, John Herbert got a cablegram at his home in Portland, Oregon. Quote, "Your niece, Claire Williamson, is dead. Would you like to come to Seattle to attend the funeral on Thursday? Dora is with me. Dr. Linda Burfield Hazard." So 3 hours later, John Herbert was on a train to Seattle to see about his nieces. He had pretty recently seen Claire and Dora, and they were healthy and normal. He said they were headed to England and Australia. Why the hell were they in Seattle? And how could Claire be dead? So Herbert arrived in Seattle after dark, surrounded by black mountains, water, hills covered in tall pines. He checked into a hotel and waited for Linda's offices to reopen in the morning. Dr. Hazard's office was clean and well put together. She gripped Herbert's hand in a firm, masculine greeting. Herbert was on the back foot from the beginning of the meeting. So Dr. Hazard first started off by saying Claire had actually been dead for days at this point. She died the previous weekend on the 19th. And Herbert was spitting mad. Like, why didn't anyone contact him? This was all insane. He was Claire's deceased mother's brother. So he was one of the last strong blood relatives. And they were really close. They were letters. They visited each other. Dr. Hazard simply said, "Hey, man, we didn't have your address." And Claire wouldn't give it to her. She said that Claire knew she was dying and there was nothing anyone could do for her. She was of sound mind until the end, and she made all the financial arrangements for her death. The doctor said Claire didn't want anyone to know about the treatment, so the doctor's hands were tied. And so totally floored. Like, he can't say anything to that. He's like, I mean, it makes sense in some way, but he's like, so, well, how did this all happen?
Well, and where's the other one?
They'll talk about it. She's with her somewhere.
Right.
So Dr. Hazard led Herbert into a small private room, pulled out a dirty white cloth bag and dumped Claire's shriveled, stinky organs out on the table. They hadn't been preserved or refrigerated or anything, just left in a bag at room temperature in the office. She said she had conducted the post-mortem exam herself and determined Claire had died from cirrhosis. She said her liver had been accidentally damaged from taking drugs for a sickness when she was a child.
Oh, God.
And as she explained, she poked at the organs with her pencil. She told Herbert she was a fasting specialist licensed by the state of Washington, that the girls had come to her to be cured through the controlled abstinence of food, and unfortunately, they were just too sick to be cured. Claire was now dead, and Dora was completely, quote, mentally incompetent. But if he wanted to, he was welcome to come to Olalla for a visit. While they waited on the loud, busy dock in West Seattle for the boat into Olalla, Dr. Hazard explained that menopause had ravaged 36-year-old Dora's brain. She was now so insane she couldn't be trusted to write a letter or manage her finances and would probably be dead from menopause any day now. So watch out, ladies. And Dora wanted to live out the rest of her days at the sanitarium. Dr. Hazard added that in her medical opinion, it would be dangerous to Dora's health to discuss business of any kind. So Herbert should just keep things light. When they finally got across the windy Puget Sound, up the steep muddy hill, and to the half-built sanitarium on the edge of the world, Herbert was reeling. And when he finally came face to face with Dora, he was devastated. Dora looked like a living skeleton. He hugged her, picked her up like when she was a little kid, and he guessed she weighed about 50 pounds.
Jesus.
They caught up a bit. Herbert tried to pretend everything was normal. They cried over Claire's death. But the strangest thing for Herbert, Dora looked worse than he could have ever imagined, but she seemed sharp as a tack. She didn't seem insane at all. He couldn't wrap his head around what was actually going on.
Yeah.
And eventually Dr. Hazard came in to the room and cut their conversation short, saying Dora was getting too much excitement for one day. So the doctor told Dora to go to sleep, and Dora did so on command.
Weird.
And Herbert was left with nothing to do except retire to the attic bedroom where his niece had died just a few days earlier. And the next day, Claire's funeral was held in Seattle. Dora was told she was too sick to go and had to stay behind at the sanitarium. So they get to the funeral home, they wheel out the coffin, and Herbert was yet again shocked and repulsed by what he saw. He asked, was there a mix-up? This body looked nothing like Claire. It had the wrong color hair, the wrong color shape of face, and she wasn't emaciated at all, at least not like Herbert was expecting, and nothing like Dora, who was still alive. Dr. Hazard just looked at Herbert with this, pity, concern, and of course, man, this is Claire. Your grief must be clouding your judgment. This is your niece. So that night, back in Olalla, Samuel Hazard handed John Herbert a document he said that Claire wrote, dated April 23rd, 1911, from Olalla, about a month before her death. Now, the letter went on and on about how great the treatment was, how much they loved Sam and Linda Hazard, how they were just too sick and they were going to die, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the starvation thing. Basically absolving Dr. Hazard of all wrongdoing, saying, different doctor in London had actually told her she would die if she didn't do the fasting treatment. So it was all 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It was not lost on Herbert, however, that the entire letter was typed and unsigned. They said, Claire got too tired to write it, so she just dictated everything to them and was too weak to sign the signature. And I guess that was enough to satisfy Uncle John Herbert, at least at the time. he figured this lady was a doctor. Dora seemed happy to be there, and she was into nature and stuff. So the sanitarium seemed like her best bet for recovery from menopause. And with that, Herbert boarded a train and headed back to Portland, leaving Dora in the bleak, half-finished sanatorium on top of the hill. Now join us next week when a plump 60-year-old lady's maid in Australia gets a cryptic message in the mail and sails halfway around the world in an attempt to rescue her girls.
Her girls? So Claire's still alive.
No, she's dead.
Oh, she is dead. Plot twist. Nope. Back to the original plot twist.
She doesn't know yet.
She doesn't know.
You have to wait till the next episode.
Yeah, you're right. I do have to wait.
My finger I keep wanting to do this to you, but my finger keeps getting caught in the power cords.
Thank you to everyone for listening to Muriel's Murders. Muriel did all the research and the writing and the hosting, and I did the other things that allow this podcast to exist. And we love you very much. And you can find us on social media. Yeah. And we're going to get a new theme song up one of these days. But in the meantime, Mario Casalini does our music, and he will continue to in the future. Mm-hmm. And
what else? I'm going to make some new art for our podcast, too.
New art, yeah. We're going to do new art. And we're just growing, just evolving, you know.
For those of us watching the video, got really self-conscious because I drink all my water out of pickle jars.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, like, when I do therapy, it's always on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I'll be talking to my therapist and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I'm a nice, like, normal person. And then I'm just like, well, interesting.
Yeah, I'm just drinking this gross-looking enema juice. It's iced coffee.
Don't call it that.
Yeah, that's it, right? Other things? No, we're going to get the other parts of this episode up early, but we don't know when.
Pretty soon, this week.
Yeah, sometime in the very near future.
Yeah.
In the meantime, take care of yourself and each other. R.I.P. Jerry Springer. Goodbye.
Bye.